Well, it has been 3 months since we moved our cattle to our hayfield. Today is the day where we're going to finally move them off. We're going to show you guys what they have done to the hayfield in the last 3 months. And we also want to talk to you a little bit about how a small cattle operation like we have can make money, maybe even enough money to live off of.
So let's get started. We've got a couple things to do today, and then you know what? We're going to talk with you about money.
Well, we're out in the middle of the hayfield because we wanted to show you guys what a great job the cattle have done mowing or eating all of this down. It's pretty darn short. They've done a very good job. Now, we didn't want to leave them out here until it was, completely eaten down, because you do want some of the grass to stay behind. But in general, they have gotten this really, really good.
Now, just for, informational purposes, this hayfield is, 23 acres?
Like 23 acres.
Yeah, and so this was really a lot of grass for the 15 cows that we have out here right now.
Right. When we had originally moved them out here, which was right around September 1st, we had hoped that they would make it until the beginning of November out here. And here we are just before Thanksgiving, and they're still out here. And really, if we really wanted to push it, we could probably leave them out here another week or so. But I think it's time to move them and to get them off.
Now, let's back up just a little bit and talk about why we made the decision to put these cows out here, actually, instead of cutting this hayfield for hay, baled hay for the winter.
So the last several years, we've done 2 cuttings of hay. We always do a big cutting of hay in the spring or early summer, and that's our main cutting of hay. It gives us a significant amount of hay, normally around 90 bales of hay, which we split with our neighbor who actually cuts the hay. So we end up with about 45 to 50 bales of hay, depending on the year. But second cutting, which is always kind of optional in our part of Missouri here, really, we have determined over the last couple of years, just isn't worth it for us. Like I said, we normally get 90 to 100 bales on first cutting. For second cutting, we normally get around 30 bales of hay, which means for us, we get about 15 bales out of that cutting. If we're feeding our cattle, which on average we feed our cattle when we need to feed hay, we need to feed them a bale every 2 to 3 days. One of the cows is licking the tripod right now. That's why the camera's moving. So when we feed our cattle, we normally feed them a bale every 2 to 3 days. So those 15 bales would last us at most 6 weeks, a month to 6 weeks, depending on how much we need to be feeding them. By putting them out on the hayfield instead, they were able to get all of that grass, and we were able to leave them out here for a full 3 months. Now, that's huge when it comes to the economics of raising cattle.
Now, also what has happened in that kind of interim time frame from the time that we put them in this hayfield to eat it down to now is that the other paddocks that we generally allow them to graze on, those pastures, have had some time to regrow. There are 2 paddocks. One which is kind of behind us, actually 3 paddocks. One that's behind us, one that's next to us, and then the bottomland. The bottomland is where they will stay all winter.
Hi, Fanny.
Oh, Fanny, you're such a good girl.
You guys have met Fanny before. This is Fanny. She's our friendliest beef cow.
She's an attention hog.
She is.
So anyway,
she loves to be scratched.
So because we have had a chance to put them out here, those other paddocks have had a chance to regrow. So because they were here and the others were growing, now we can move them to the other paddocks before we start feeding hay. That's the biggest thing here, is that every time we have, hey, cows. Okay, Fanny, get going.
They're all very intrigued by the camera.
Yeah, and the tripod. So now we get to move them from the hayfield to other paddocks that still have grass, rather than introducing hay for the first time.
Right. Had we not put them out here, I think we would have been feeding hay probably by
October, the first week of October.
Right. That's when a lot of our neighbors had started feeding hay to their cattle, because at the end of the summer we ended up having kind of a drought time, and the cattle really had nothing to eat.
Right.
If we would have cut this hay, all of the other grass had stopped growing by that point, and we would have been feeding hay early on.
So this video is really about making money as a small beef farmer. And the biggest cost savings that we have made this year is by not cutting the hay here for second cutting, allowing the cows to graze this hay field so that we could offset the date that we would have to start feeding them hay, basically saving money by not having to feed them hay as early.
Now, I don't want anyone to get the impression that we were somehow being bad neighbors by not allowing our neighbor
True.
to cut this hay. We talked this decision over with our neighbor. He was perfectly fine with it. He cuts hay for a lot of people. By us not cutting the hay, he's not going to miss those
Right.
15 bales that he would have gotten from us. So I don't want you to think that. This was a decision that we made along with him for really what was best for our land and what was best for our cattle.
Right.
He's also a cattle farmer, so he understands how these decisions need to be made.
Right. And over the past 3 years, prior to this year, our second cutting hay volume has decreased significantly. And, he understands and knows that also. So by letting this hayfield rest, letting the cows on here to eat and poop
And fertilize it.
Yeah, exactly. It hopefully will give us even bigger returns in the spring for our main cutting of hay.
Right. So we've got a few things that we need to accomplish with the cattle today. We're going to move them off of the hayfield onto a new paddock where there is still some green grass for them. And then we want to go over
Go, heifer, go.
the actual price.
Go, heifer.
And then we want to go over the actual price that we just recently sold one of our steers for, so that you guys can get an idea of how a small cattle operation like we have can actually make some money.
Sorry,
Now they're trying to eat my tools out of the back of out of the UTV. They're always up to something. That means that they're ready to move. They're getting anxious. I think we should hop back in the UTV, go open a gate, and let them onto greener pastures. All right, you can tell they're excited. They can see that I'm headed for a gate. All right. Well, we want to take just a second to thank the sponsor of today's video, AG1. Many of you know that we take our health and nutrition very seriously here on the homestead. In fact, almost everything we do revolves around food and nutrition in some way. Whether it's raising animals, growing a garden, preserving food, everything we do revolves around food.
And even though we do all those things, we can still be lacking vital nutrients. For the past month, we have been incorporating AG1 into our intermittent fasting eating schedule. We've been drinking it just before lunch to break our fast, and we have been loving it.
AG1 delivers optimal amounts of nutrients in forms that help your body thrive. AG1's ingredients help support gut health, focus and energy, stress and mood balance, and immune defense.
AG1 provides an all-in-one supplement. It includes vitamins, minerals, prebiotics, probiotics, green and superfoods, antioxidants, stress adaptogens, and digestive enzymes.
Right now, AG1 is offering a surprise gift along with the welcome kit when you first subscribe. So make sure you check out the link in the description of this video.
That's right, click the link in the description or scan the QR code on your screen to get your free gift.
Thanks AG1 for sponsoring today's video. Here we go. Are you guys excited? Yeah, you are. All right, here we go.
Oh, that calf doesn't know what to do. Just stay right there. Just walk away if you can.
I'm going to.
I'm gonna back up. You can't see it, but Kevin's crawling through the barbed wire and coming to the side of that calf, hoping to push it through the fence. The calf's on that's running. Takes a while for these calves to figure out what to do. No, 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 no. Sometimes they'll go right through the barbed wire. You can see Kevin over there. We're just going to try to probably get behind her. She doesn't know what to do. She hasn't been through that gate very often. All right, well, we have chased that calf long enough. The grass on where the mamas are at is long enough that they are going to be so preoccupied over there that they're not going to want to come back out in the hayfield. This calf is going to be motivated to come and find her mama and come back through the gate, and everything's going to be fine. We'll come back in an hour, make sure that she made it back to mama, and then we'll shut this gate. But we really want to move on, show you guys how amazing the grass is in this new paddock, even though it's almost December, where we've just moved these cows to. They are so excited to be by all of this fresh green grass.
Well, here we are on the other side of the fence. This is what the cattle have been staring at for the last, 3 or 4 weeks while they were still out in the hayfield. There was still grass in the hayfield, but it wasn't, nice green long grass that they've been wanting. This is actually pretty amazing for this time of year for them to still have this much green grass. This paddock, I believe, is probably around, 10, 15 acres if we totaled up the entire thing. And they've got quite a bit of grass to eat here. Now, not all of it is as long as this area right here, but my guess is we're going to get at least another, between this paddock and the other paddocks that we have to move them to before they get to their winter paddock, I think we're going to get another 3 weeks before we need to start feeding hay, which is unbelievable. We could make it almost to Christmas before we start feeding hay, which is great for a year where we had pretty much a drought at the end of summer. What this means to me is that every 3 days that they are out here, it is saving us $40, because that's about what our bales of hay ended up costing us this year after we paid for fertilizing and split half of it with our neighbor and all of that. Ended up costing us about $40 a bale for our hay. So if we feed a bale of hay every 3 days, that's every 3 days that they can not be eating hay. It's $40 in our pocket, which means a lot when you total that up over the course of an entire winter. So I do need to give them a mineral block over here. I actually brought their one from the hayfield. Then we need to go turn the water off that we had running over to the hayfield. We had a stock tank out in the hayfield for them. We're going to go turn that water off and drain the hose because it is starting to get below freezing now at night. And I think these guys are going to be set. Once we know that that calf is over here, in a couple hours we'll come shut that gate, and then they will be over here for probably the next couple of weeks before we move them to our lower land where they will spend the rest of the winter. So this is the mineral block that they will use. This is just trace minerals and salt. And we'll put this back here. They're used to having it back in this area, so this is where we'll put it again. And then there is a small pond for them to drink out of right down here. And then this area also connects to the area that we call the government pond lot, which is kind of around the corner over there. So they'll have 2 ponds to drink out of while they're in this area, which is great because we don't have to use hoses to give them water, which is better in this freezing weather. So this is the water tank we need to quick turn the water off to. You can see it's got a float valve here on it. After I turn the water off, I'll disconnect the hose and drain the water out of it. But I'm going to leave the water in the tank. The deer and other wildlife can come drink out of this for a while. It'll give them a good source of water. I'm going to show you guys a trick. We don't have a gate over here, and our hydrant, our frost-free hydrant for this is over on the other side there. So since we don't have a gate, I need to be a little bit smarter than the cows are, which I am just a little bit smarter than the cows. Not a whole lot, I don't think sometimes, but a little bit. And what they don't know is this strand of barbed wire right here is really loose. And I can just come through the fence like that. Apparently they haven't figured that out yet. So I'm going to come over and I'm going to turn this fence or this water off. And we'll disconnect the hose. And then we can disconnect it from here too, just so it drains, or if there is some water in there and it freezes, it doesn't break the hose. There we go. Leave that on there for next summer. And feels like most of the water's out of the hose. That's downhill over there, so that's good. Like I said, we'll leave this here for the deer. Now we're going to drive around. We're just going to check the fence on our way. And then I think we're going to head back to the house to talk to you guys about selling that steer, because today is one of those weird days where our high temperature for the day was actually at like 6 o'clock this morning, and it's just continually gotten colder and colder as the day has gone on. You guys, it's just feeling like winter out here. Next week, we've got days where it's barely supposed to get above freezing for the highs, and I think there might even be some snow in the 10-day forecast. So winter's here. We had a nice long fall. I'm not complaining. I knew winter would get here eventually. So let's jump in the UTV. We're going to head back toward the house. We'll check the fence along the way, and we're going to warm up by a fire while we talk to you guys about that steer. We're back in the house. We've got a good fire going. The dogs have decided to join us. This is our beagle, our male beagle, Bubba, and our female beagle, Rosie, down there on the floor. They love wood stove season.
Yep.
They absolutely love like if you were to sit as close to the wood stove as they do, you would die of heat. But they love to be like 140 degrees all winter long. Mm-hmm. This chair, we only bring this out in the winter, and this is specifically Bubba's chair.
Yep.
He loves this chair in front of the wood stove, and he pretty much, other than to get up and eat and go outside to go to the bathroom, he doesn't leave this chair most of the winter.
He knows you're talking about him.
I know. He's not used to being on camera, so he's a little
camera shy. Yeah, so is Rosie.
So we came back in the house not to talk to you about the beagles, but to talk to you about selling a steer that we recently sold to our good friends Rich and Shelley from Air to Ground Farms.
Now, there are really two ways that you can sell calves. And just to kind of back up a little bit, our whole kind of business model with cattle is to have a cow-calf cattle operation.
Right.
And what that means is that we keep cows or female cattle, so we can breed them. They can have calves, and then once their calves are about 6 months old, then we sell them. That's how we plan to make money with cattle. The other way that you can make money with cattle is by holding back the calves or by buying calves and raising them up to butcher weight or butcher age.
That's typically called a finishing operation. It means that you're finishing the cattle, you're getting them from that weaning age to the size where they're ready to process for meat.
Generally, when you're finishing calves on grain, they can be ready as early as 14 months, like 14 to 18 months. But if you're finishing on grass only, then a lot of times it takes much longer, and you're holding on to those calves until they're like 24 to 26 months old before you can take them to the butcher.
Right. So we've kind of developed a partnership with our friends Rich and Shelley at Air to Ground Farms, where because we really just want to be a cow-calf operation. We want to raise mama cows. We want them to have their calves here, and then we want to wean those calves and sell them off as quickly as we can at about 6 months old. And really, because they own a meat shop and they're actually selling meat to the public, they want to do more of a finishing operation where they want to buy calves, raise them for an additional, like 18 months on their farm. So they'll buy them from us at 6 months. They'll keep them for another, year to 18 months. And then they'll take them to the processor, get them processed, and sell them as retail cuts of meat. So recently, we sold one of our steers to them as kind of part of that, partnership that we've developed.
And that really is advantageous for us because we haven't really enjoyed taking our calves to the auction. And unless you have a direct partnership to sell to kind of like a private buyer, your only other option to sell calves is to take them to auction or take them to the sale barn.
Right.
And while that is really a good way to sell
Right.
your calves, what it means to us and what we know is that we're taking our cows or our calves to the sale barn or to the auction. They're going to be purchased, and typically they're being taken to a feedlot.
Right.
And while that is really where most of the beef is being raised in this country and really probably around the world, it makes our hearts a little bit sad because we take such good care of our cattle. The calves are completely raised on like mother's milk and grass the entire time. To then think that they're going to go through a really stressful situation, going to the sale barn, being sold and trucked to another location and fed as quickly as possible, as
Right.
much grain
Along
as they
with
can
thousands
eat.
of other cows.
Right, in a small area, then to go to the butcher, it just kind of is sad.
Right.
So to have a partnership with a small farm like Rich and Shelley, Air to Ground Farms, Air to Ground Meats, to sell them direct to a private business, a private owner, really makes our hearts feel better.
Right. Now, let's just say this. There's nothing wrong with going the other route and taking cattle to the auction. You might hear people say, we're taking our cattle to the sale barn, or we're taking our cattle to a livestock auction. That's what they're talking about. We've done that many, many times. That's how we've gotten rid of most of the calves that we've raised on our farm. And that's probably what happens to 90% of the calves or cows in the United States. That's how they're sold. Is they're sold at a livestock auction. They then go to like a feedlot who raises them up. That feedlot then sells them off to a processing plant who processes them, and they go out into the retail market. That's just what happens. So there's nothing wrong with that, and that is how the big majority of cattle farmers in the United States make their money.
And let's be honest, if we had much bigger of an operation than we have right now, and in the future, if we have 20 cows giving birth to 20 calves every year, a small private farm may not be able to buy all of those from us.
Right.
So, that's working for us right now. It makes our hearts happy right now. But in the future, we may not be able to continue to sell privately, and we'll have to go back to the sale barn. But for right now, that's making us happy. It's making our hearts feel happy. And we're very excited that our calves are going to go to a small local farm that is, in the end, going to provide meat to our local community.
Right. And because they completely grass feed their cattle, they don't ever feed them grain. We know that these calves are going to be raised as 100% grass fed, which we really do feel like is the best way to raise cattle.
And really, it's the healthiest to consume as well.
Right. He was debating if he wanted to leave, but his chair always calls him back.
And he's really enjoying the spotlight.
He is. So I've got here in my hand kind of the market report for cattle for the last week. Now, when you start to raise cattle and you start to sell cattle, this is an important thing because in your area, whatever part of the country you're in, the USDA and the kind of your local agricultural department is going to put out a weekly report telling you what cattle sold for in your area. Cattle are considered a commodity, which means they're bought and sold on a market, which means the price fluctuates week to week. So when you go to a livestock auction, it's exactly that. It's an auction. There are different buyers there, usually representing some of the bigger feedlots, and they will bid on the cattle that come up for auction that week. And they do this all over the country every single day of the week. trying to buy cattle at the best price. So when you first start in cattle, these things might be a little bit confusing because you can look at the prices on here and you may not quite understand what you're looking at. So this is the local report for our area for last week when we sold our steer to Rich and Shelley. And I've got it highlighted here, but in our area, what are considered feeder steers, which is what the one was that we sold, feeder steers in our area sold, and I've got it written here on the back, there was a range in the price. So he weighed 520 pounds. They're going to label these by how much the calves weigh at the time that they're sold. Our steer weighed 520 pounds. So steers in that price range last week sold for an average of $284 to $335 per 100 pounds. So whenever you look at one of these charts, you're going to see a price, and that price is based on 100-pound weights.
Right.
So per 100 pounds.
Yes.
So the average then, if our range was 284 to 335, our average was $309.50. And our deal with Rich and Shelley is that we will sell them our calves at kind of the average price.
Right.
I think that's a fair thing for all of us involved. So at $309.50, we then multiply that by 5.2 because that price is per 100 pounds, which means that calf brought us $1,609.40, which I think is very, very good. And actually, right now, cattle are selling at a pretty high price.
Yes.
And $1,609 for he was 7 months old, is a very good price.
Right. Now we're talking about small beef herds as an opportunity to add income or as a source of income for your family. So if we had 10 calves to sell today for that price, that would be $16,000 a year. That's nothing to sneeze about.
Right.
It's actually awesome. Now, our hope is to get up to, what do you want, 20
I would like
mama
25
cows?
mama cows.
Mama cows. So more than double that. So that's a really nice income for a family like ours with a small herd of cattle. Now, the cattle are selling on the high range.
Right.
A couple of years ago, it was kind of on the low range, and really we got about half that. I think for a calf that size, we probably got about 800 per cattle.
Right.
But still, times 20, that's still $16,000 in a year, and that is a nice kind of income or earning to supplement our farm.
Right. And the nice part about doing the type of operation that we're doing, where it's a cow-calf operation, is if we plan everything correctly, our calves should be born in the early spring. They should be able to raise all summer long on our farm on nothing but grass, which means really we didn't spend any money on them at all.
Right.
And then we can sell them at the end of the summer before we start feeding hay, which means really, other than grass, we didn't spend any money on that calf at all. And of course, we need to count in all the costs that we do have for the mama cows, but a lot of that ends up being profit on the calf.
Right.
So the point that we're trying to make with this is to say that if you have enough land to raise something like cattle, and you can have, say, 20 to 25 head of cattle, and your monthly expenses are pretty low, it's definitely feasible to make a good portion of your living raising cattle in this way.
Even if you had enough land just to raise 10 cows and 10 calves every year, that's on the low end an additional $8,000.
Right.
On the high end, an additional $16,000 to go toward your farm, your family's income every year. And I really think that that is an awesome opportunity for the homesteader and the small farmer.
Right. So we get asked this question a lot about the way that we make money actually off our homestead. And this is really the main way that we are making money on our homestead these days. Now, there's no big secret that we do make money on YouTube as well, and we don't want to downplay that. That has been a real blessing to us, but we do want to show you guys that it is definitely feasible to make a living without something like YouTube as well, and that cattle really is the best bang for your buck if you have the land to do that.
So we really hope that this video gave you guys some insight on how a cow-calf herd and business can provide money for you on your homestead or your small farm, and that there are opportunities and ways to make a significant amount of money on just your homestead or your small farm.
Right. So if you enjoyed videos like this, let us know in the comments section. We'd love to keep bringing you more videos talking about kind of the economic side of homesteading. It's something that we put a lot of thought into. We both come from a pretty, business background, and this is something that we're always thinking about. And we'd love to help you guys learn more about kind of the business side of running a homestead.
If you're enjoying videos like this, make sure that you hit the subscribe button, but also, and really more importantly, give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it. Until next time, thank you so much for stopping by our homestead. Take care and God bless.
God bless.